there's no one around you saying like, what are your boundaries with your clients? Or like, are you taking proper time off at the weekends? Like, no one tells you these things, right? You're just going all in, taking the messy action, going for it. And so I think all of those practical things are kind of why I burn out. And I do look back and think, gosh, I'm glad I went through that. I would never wish to go through it again. It was so hard. But now I look back and think I learned so many lessons about.
Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Alice. Welcome to the show. Before we delve into talking about your new book and everything that goes into sort of the business marketing world that you're in, let me learn a little bit about you. What do I need to know about Alice that explains how you got to where you are today?
Oh, good question. You'll have to tell me if I keep rambling on, but I'd probably begin back to where my business started. I am definitely an accidental entrepreneur. I never woke up and thought, I want to start a business. Although having now met so many business owners, I don't know many people's stories that do begin that way. There's often a random catalyst, isn't there? Which for me was leaving school early. So I was 16 years old in the UK, halfway through my A-levels. So the 2 years university, and I wasn't maybe what you'd associate with being a school dropout. I performed quite well. I did actually quite enjoy school, but I just was like done with it. Like the only phrase I can use to sum up how I felt, I was so bored of, learning something in one room, repeating it in another room 6 months later in an exam. I didn't love the social aspect of school. I was quite socially anxious at the time. And I'd had a taste of the world of work from a part-time job that I'd had, weirdly, in a Christmas grotto doing elfing. And that genuinely just like lit me up. When you don't really know that you're feeling unsatisfied and then you do something and that lights you up and then you're like, oh, now suddenly I realize how I'm feeling. And I think that was it for me. I was just like, I want to get out into the world of work. I want to be challenged. I want to do stuff. And I was offered through that job as an elf, a full-time job as their events manager. So I quit school at 16 for that full-time job. It's technically an apprenticeship so that I could leave school legally. Did that for a year and then really randomly met someone at a hotel breakfast who ran a charity, offered me a freelance job in social media management. Don't ask me why. I think she's young, she knows social media. He was wrong, but I gave it my best. So I quit the full-time job and started out as a freelancer at 17 years old. Did not know what freelance meant. Suddenly realized I was running some kind of business. So that's how the accidental element came in. And then I'd say the rest is history, but as every business owner will know, the journey is never linear, is it? So
No.
8 years since then has been, lots of growth in the early days, very then intense level of burnout, kind of rebuilding the business, much slower growth, lots of pivots, challenges, evolution to now, do what I do today. So never, ever thought this is what I would do, but I adore it and couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, funnily enough, I put a post out on my LinkedIn today about you don't always have to know the final destination or the big sort of reason. I mean, my example I used was that you don't always have to visualize it. From the fact I climbed Snowdon once, and that was funny enough when I was at school. And of course, I couldn't see the top when I started, but I just took a step, and eventually you get there. And sometimes it's okay not to have it all figured out, but just do something to move yourself forward. And certainly you've gone into work and gone, actually, I quite like this, and sort of learned along the way. But you mentioned there, you almost had that sort of burnout stage in the middle, which is incredibly common for people because we get sucked into just working because we do love it, but maybe don't have, I don't know, the skills, the knowledge around running a business. Why do you think so many people fall into that?
Yeah, it almost feels like a Pokemon that we're all trying to collect along the way, isn't it? Like, have you burnt out yet? No. Oh, that'll come. You'll collect that at some point. Yeah, I say that in jest. I'm not proud of it, but I think for so many business owners, like you said, it is almost a kind of inevitable thing. And I really think that's just because no one prepares you for the logistics of running a business in a way that's sustainable. I think what businesses take to grow is an intense level of dedication and consistency. And that is not necessarily synonymous with balance and calm and rest and all of the things that help us to not burn out. I look back to myself in that first year of business. A, I was incredibly young, but B, I think if I'd have done it at any age, there's no one around you saying like, what are your boundaries with your clients? Or like, are you taking proper time off at the weekends? Like no one tells you these things, right? You're just going all in, taking the messy action, going for it. And so I think all of those practical things are kind of why I burn out. And I do look back and think, gosh, I'm glad I went through that. I would never wish to go through it again. It was so hard. But now I look back and think I learned so many lessons about how to navigate business in a more balanced way. And I think in the 8 years since, I don't think it's a case of you burn out and then you never get close again. I think of burnout as like the edge of a cliff. And I think I play a constant game of how close to the edge of the cliff can I get before realizing, oh crap, we're going to go over. How do we make a U-turn?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's such a common thing because businesses take intensity, they take focus. And I think it's very hard to give a business what it needs to grow and look after yourself at the same time. I find that I feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions with those two goals. But I think I've learned, okay, they're never going to sit in harmony. How do I just try and do both to the best of my ability? And sometimes I get it wrong and I get close to burnout, but I don't think you can ever be perfect at not burning out. I think if I focused fully on my rest, the business would fail. I don't know if that's a bad thing to say, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of interesting conversations over sort of balance. Yeah, we hear the word balance a lot, but it is tough because actually to grow a business, people need to understand you do need to dedicate time and effort and consistent time and effort to
Yeah.
it. But equally burning out, I guess it's understanding when you need to rest and when you need to work. And the analogy I often use, I go to the gym, if I'm going to do bench press, I might do 5 sets of 5. And I tell you what, when I'm pushing that weight, I'm working hard and I probably can't do it anymore. I get to that point where that was the last rep and then I rest so that I can do another set.
Yeah.
And quite often, I think it's just understanding when you need that little bit of rest so that you can push hard again. I think this idea of just swanning about and having an easy life every day when running a business is very unattainable for the majority of people.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think a bit of what you're speaking to there as well links to the idea of working in a more seasonal way in your business. I used to really put a pressure on myself to have this kind of constant output. I should just be at a similar level of pushing and stretching and working at the same time. Whereas actually what I've noticed for my business, and so many clients seem to have shown me the same, is like it's seasonal. There are seasons where it feels like summer, right? Everything's happening. You're pushing, you're growing, you're like, putting in those reps, you're putting in the effort. And then there's often a season of rest that is followed by, where you're taking stock, you're maybe taking a bit of a step back, you're sowing some seeds. I think we can't have summer without winter. And it was a real light bulb for me a few years ago in business, realizing actually the rest is needed to then allow me to come back into that sprint. So now I look at my business and I look at my year in, right, when am I sprinting and then when am I sustaining? Sustaining is my word for when I'm kind of just taking a bit of a step back, keeping the business running, but taking a rest. And I think the more that we work with that, the easier things become. And also like having rest. Like I take the whole of August off. Be easy for people to look at what I'm doing now and be like, wow, she's so productive and hardworking. And like, I am, but like, I'm about to spend a whole month doing absolutely, can I swear on this podcast?
Go for it. Yeah.
Like I will be doing nothing for a whole month. So like, yeah, you can't be at constant output all the time. I think we've got to realize that the two work together. Like you said, you need those rest points to then put in the reps.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, you've worked with lots of business owners. Do you think a lot of it is that we're very busy being busy and not necessarily working on the right things? Because I've certainly discovered that sort of deep work, and I'm not the best at it because I get very distracted very easily. But I do know if I can get a couple of hours work done in the morning, actually that sets me up for the day. Do you think we all work on things that maybe don't really push that needle forward and claim we're really busy? But
Completely. And I'm the first person to put my hand up and say that I do the same. Like it always amazes me when it's a bank holiday week and I'm almost often every time forget when a bank holiday is until my friends that don't have businesses go, you meant to be off on that day. It amazes me every time there's a bank holiday, my work magically gets done in 4 days. Or anytime, take this week, for example, got any space to do work tomorrow. The book's coming out the day after, also not. Magically, all my work has fit into 3 days. And for me, what that always reminds me of is exactly what you've said. I'm often just busy. I'm not intentional. And I don't think it's ever a kind of overnight fix, is it? I think we are built to probably just kind of keep ourselves busy. We think that's a measure of success. We probably get drawn towards the tasks as well that we find more interesting or more fun. But yeah, I'm always trying to ask myself and my clients the question of like, are we actually doing the things that are going to move the needle forwards? I notice we often have a real tendency to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, just because that makes us feel like we're putting in the work. That's what we should do. For me, just as you've said there, I actually realized that my best schedule, I start work at 7 a.m. I do 2-3 hours of really intense work in the morning, and I'll generally clock off at 2 or 3 p.m. Now, that's when things aren't crazy busy. When they're busier, I'll use that afternoon more. But I've really tried to learn recently, like, not what do I feel like I should do, but actually, if I were just doing the priority things in a way that makes most sense for me, what does that look like? One of my favorite activities to do with a client, and it's never fun to do, but afterwards you always think, I'm glad I did that, is some time tracking. So get an app like Toggle, put in it all the various things you do in your business. So like marketing, answering emails, sitting on social media, on client calls, all the different categories of tasks, and measure for a couple of weeks how long you're spending on each of those things. It is so uncomfortable because it's really eye-opening when you realize, gosh, I'm spending 30% of my time faffing on social media. Yeah. Or I'm only spending 5% of my time selling or generating leads. Like, where you spend your time will dictate where your business is in 6 months' time. So I think we've got to be really honest with ourselves about where we're spending our time. And just like you said, ask that question of like, am I busy or am I intentional? But I say all of this, I've got an A-star in being busy for the sake of being busy. So I'm definitely learning this every day.
Yeah, I'm always very open by the fact that when I put out advice and, I might post some motivational stuff, I'm talking to myself as much as I am anyone else. Do not think that I've got my shit together. Like I do struggle with it at times, but I understand, and then I use tools to help me overcome those. And time tracking is a key one. And then secondly, I try and look at, when do I have my energy levels to do those tasks, and try and match the task up to where my mindset is, because otherwise, certainly there is something about 3 o'clock, and I don't know whether I had this conversation with someone else. I don't know whether it's inbuilt in back from, we spent 10 years at school where 3:15 was the end of the day. Yeah. Is that built in? Because if I try and do anything finance related, sort of 3:30, I can't look at a spread. I mean, I don't like spreadsheets at the best of times, but looking at one at that time of the day just sends me over the edge. So I know I get that boring task done first thing in the morning. I know it's done, and I think that's just as important as well, isn't it? And blocking time for those. What's the famous saying? It's saying about, if you give a man all day to cut down a tree, he'll spend half of it sharpening the axe, or it's something along those lines.
Yes.
Because we will the time, or the task expands to the time we've allowed for it. There is some law, isn't there? And I can't remember
Parkinson's
it.
law.
Parkinson's law. That's it. Yeah.
No, completely true. And I think it's being really honest with yourself is the first step, isn't it? Because I think we're all tempted to kind of gloss over some of these things. Like, I'm so busy. How are you? I'm busy. How are things going? Yeah, really busy. And it's like, are we really measuring our success by how long did I spend today sat at a laptop? Because like, to me, that's not my goal. Like, my goal isn't to sit and work, but so often that seems to creep in as my measure of success, as my mindset. And so for me, it's trying to ask the question more of like, if I ended today and felt like I'd moved the needle forwards, what does that look like? Like, how do I measure my success in not actually maybe how long I worked or when I worked, but like what I did? And to me, it's the most basic thing, but it comes down to having a really clear to-do list for the day. Like, no, I do not let myself be led by any level of emotion or what's coming in. Because if I did that, I would spend my whole day on social media and firefighting in my inbox. I will begin the day thinking, right, what is my version of a successful day? What are my priorities? What are my goals? How do I use today to move those forwards? And actually those things get done before anything else is allowed to get that attention. But yeah, it's a constant thing, isn't it? You must have figured it out, but it's great you bring it up, because I think even many years into business as we are, it's not something that you necessarily figure out, is it?
No, having that discipline to, have that to-do list related to tasks that are really important. I often joke that I have my to-do list and then I've got Outlook, which is basically a to-do list set by other people.
Yeah.
Um, Actually might not be the priority, but we're very reactive to clients. And I'm not saying you should push all your clients to the side. Don't care about them. No, obviously it's not the way it works. But equally, you need to look at the bigger picture of where do you want your business to go, and what task is the most important, and what's important and urgent, and the matrix, etc. But what should you be working on? And it's really interesting that I'm talking to someone who, you know again, I see as having their shit together, but equally we all have that moments of, we do have to work at making sure this does work.
Mm. Yeah, completely agree. And it's a constant, like, I almost think of it as like you kind of fall a little bit away and then you have to bring yourself back to it and go, okay, let me ask myself these questions again. Like, I'll do time tracking probably about once every couple of months in my business, just to bring myself back to that question of, am I just busy? Am I doing the things that move me forward? And I think it's learning almost your own little kind of hacks and routines, isn't it? It sounds like for both of us, a chunk of time in the morning where we get the priority stuff done is really key. For people, whether it's time tracking, whether it's outsourcing the things that are most important. Exactly like you said, it's so easy, isn't it, to just spend your days firefighting everyone else's to-dos. I would actually say I'm probably too far the other way with that. I'm really I'd be focused on my own stuff. And I have a rule of thumb in my business of, if you pay me, you get my first attention. Like, hands down. If I see a client pop up in my inbox or my WhatsApp or wherever, that trumps everything. But actually, anyone that doesn't pay me or work with me, as in team, actually is right at the bottom of the list. And that might sound a bit kind of, that's not me being ungrateful. That's not me being rude. It's just me being hyper focused, because I know that if I don't prioritize my clients and then my stuff as number one, I'm never going to have the capacity and time to get to those other things anyway.
No.
So yeah, sorry, I think I've taken that a bit of a tangent from your question.
No, I mean, that's great, because it is about managing, I guess, one of those things on those inbound leads and things like that. And actually, until someone's paying you, they're not a client, and it's making sure actually this is worth your time. And I mean that respectfully to everyone who inquires with me and sends me a DM. But quite often people ask for a meeting, and actually we're talking a bit about productivity. And I think you said about the 9 to 5. Hang on, I'm going on a tangent here. But anyway, you said about the 9 to 5, but we've stuck to that because it's what you do. You work 9 to 5. And equally, we always used to sit in an office, and if we had a meeting, we'd go to that meeting and things like that. Now, since that sort of COVID time, I work from home a lot more, and people are used to remote meetings and things like that. And quite often, I remember I used to travel, maybe 40 minutes to go and sit with a client, spend an hour with them, realizing coming away going, well, that's never going to go anywhere, because we've both agreed that actually we're not the right fit. And then now I'm like, can we have a 10-minute Teams meeting? Like, just try and be productive with your time. And actually, until that money is starting to come in, don't give as much of your time away, because time is literally your most valuable asset. Everyone worries about money in business. It's not money, it's time that we need more of.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think it's getting to know almost your own matrix, isn't it? Of like, who gets what level of priority, so that you can prioritize those things that are coming into you. It's business owners, we are bombarded every day by other people's wants and needs of us. And I think it's unhealthy to go to either end of the spectrum. It's obviously very unhealthy to go, everyone gets everything. But it's also not good for business to go, no, I've got such strong boundaries that no one can touch me. Like, that's not good business sense, right? So I think it is finding that kind of blend of, right, who are the people that I give certain access to, and what do they get? And then how do I kind of navigate those other things? I think for me, one of the biggest things I struggle with in doing that, but I'm really trying to work through, particularly at the moment, is not feeling like that makes you a bad person or rude. I've always had this mindset of like, my job is to be of service to others. And I've interpreted that as, therefore, I must be infinitely flexible, sacrifice on my boundaries, give them exactly what they want. And actually, I think it's less from a place of like wanting to change that and more of needing to change that. Now I'm like, actually, I can't do that, something's going to drop. I'm going to burn out, or I'm going to stop being able to give my clients great service if I keep doing that. So I've got to learn to put some of these boundaries into place. Saying no is so hard, isn't it? We have
It really is.
God, if I say no, what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm rude or entitled, or maybe they're not going to want to do this thing with me anymore. But definitely what I've learned is the more that I do it, you say to someone, hey, look, I'd love to do this. I have capacity in 3 weeks. And then what do? They go, okay, cool. We'll do it in 3 weeks. Or you go, hey, yeah, I'd love to have that call. I do my calls Tuesday to Thursday, 10 till 3. And they go, cool, yeah, Wednesday at 10. That's fine by me. I think we have such a perception, don't we? That oh God, if I say my boundaries or what I need, everything's going to erupt. And actually it doesn't. Often it just means that we're then better for those people. That for me is a big lesson I'm trying to teach myself at the moment. And I've seen the impact of it. The more boundaried and structured I've been, the better I've been to everyone in my business. Actually, it's that idea of if you put yourself first, it's not selfish. Actually, that ends up helping everyone else more. It just feels backwards, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But it is. You've got to put your own oxygen mask on first, to be able to help other people. It is just the way it is, and it is a really tough one from when we have a service-based business where we're helping other people. You work with lots of businesses to help them grow their business, help them grow their marketing. You feel like you should always be helping, but actually sometimes helping is by making sure you've got the capacity and the mental sort of bandwidth to be able to support them when they actually need it, not at the beck and call.
Yes. Yeah, completely that. And there's a way that both of those needs can meet in the middle, right? Like my rule of thumb is 24 hours midweek. I'll always get back to someone who's working with me. What that doesn't have to mean though, is I'm looking every 24 hours. That could just mean that at the start and end of every day, I get back to everyone. Actually, that means most people get 12-hour maximum response times. It's small things like that, isn't it? Of going good service doesn't have to mean I reply in 20 seconds. Good service can still be on my terms and work for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book that you've got coming out. So where did this come from? Where was the idea for the book?
So it feels very full circle that it's coming out on the 20th of June, because it was actually on the 22nd of June, 2022, that I first spoke with my publishers. So I got an email from them, from my brilliant editor, Liz, and it basically said, hey, we want a book about marketing. We want it to be kind of practical, no fluff, straight to the point. We found you. We think that you align with that style. Are you up for having a chat about writing it? So I was really, really fortunate that kind of they started the conversation with me, because I can safely say this book would never have happened if they hadn't have done that. I'd never thought about writing a book before. I'm definitely more of a speaker than a writer, and I say that even more confidently after writing 50,000 words. It is not my strength. So I hadn't thought about writing a book, but it was amazing to me how quickly I was obsessed with the idea. We had a couple of emails back and forth. We jumped on a quick call, and very quickly I was obsessed with this book idea that I'd come up with. I was like, the world needs this practical guide, a book that's more about using the book than reading the book. That was all I kind of keep coming back to. It was I just want to make a business book that gets used, not read. I feel like so much of what's out there is just words and words and words, and they're great words, but I'm always about, right, what am I doing with this? What's the action? So that's kind of when the conversation started. And then it was a few months to kind of negotiate and sign the deal. And then a long time, over 1.5 years to kind of write, edit, finish, tweak, all of the steps that I had no clue were involved. I've learned a lot about what it takes to publish a book.
And what do business owners get out of the book then? And I mean that really respectfully, to sell the book to everyone.
So it's kind of blurb is it's a simple guide to growing a business online. So the easiest summary I can give to it, which probably isn't super sexy, is everything that I think is relevant to do with marketing strategy, I put into that book. So the strategy that I teach in my work is kind of this 3-step process, where to build any strategy, but particularly a marketing one, you've got to get clarity, build a plan, and then take action. It's true with any strategy, right? We need the foundation, the clarity, the who, what, why, when. We need the plan. What are we actually doing? Where? And then we need the action. How are we going to take action? Systems, processes, mindset, etc. So the book is split into those 3 sections, and there's kind of a number of chapters within each. And I basically just sat down and went, right, I've helped a lot of people with their marketing. What are the things I think every single person needed to hear, and then how can I kind of bring that into a book. So it's designed that people could either read it the whole way through if they're like no clue about marketing, want to build their strategy kind of from the ground up, or if you're like, cool, I think I'm doing pretty well, but I just want to learn more about video or storytelling or taking action or KPIs or setting marketing goals, like you can just jump to that chapter, and then it's hopefully, in my opinion, it is very kind of easy to consume, actionable content. So yeah, it's basically my brain in a book. That's probably not a good sales pitch for my brain. Anyone wants that,
but it's all your knowledge that you've built up over the years
yes.
on how to grow a business, and I guess part of that, digital. I assume they approach you because of your personal brand, and personal brand is such a big talking point at the moment, mainly because I think it's one of the most important aspects there is in business. So talk to me about your personal brand, and did you deliberately grow that? Was it an accidental growth? Like what happened?
Yeah, I think the book for me has definitely been the biggest learning in the power of a personal brand. Like when I've looked back at that email since that they sent me, it not going to get the words completely right, but it just basically says like, look, we want a book that's this, and this. Your online presence implies this, and this. Those two lists are the same. Do you want to write it? And I looked at that email again the other day and I was like, gosh, that is what a personal brand does, right? Is it doesn't just tell people what you do, but everything else, how you do it, why you do it, your style. They were not just looking for a marketing expert. They could have found a million. They wanted a marketing expert that was doing things in a certain way. And to me, that's really the difference between like a personal brand and just like a reputation. Is like a personal brand always takes it that bit deeper, right? People aren't just connected to your job title. They're connected to the way that you do that, why you do that, your values, etc. So I can't sit here and say that I reverse engineered it. I wish I had. I wish it was this really strategic, I want to get a book deal. How do I do that? But I can say that I do reverse engineer a lot of the things that come in. I think in the early days of the business, to answer your question fully, it was quite accidental. Just saw other people, I didn't sit down and think I'm going to build a personal brand. I just thought I need to reach people to sell my help. So I show up online. And I think then over the years, personal branding has become a thing. And I realized, okay, there's something more strategic to this. But again, what does strategic mean? It's just doing something slightly intentionally, right? So for me, that intention has always just been, how do I make the internals of my business as visible externally as possible? I think of my brand as almost like the windows on a shop window. People are walking down the street. I don't want them to have to work with me to work out and find out who I am. I want my external presence to be really, really accurately sharing my internal, expertise, approach, story, etc. So I really just try and bring that into everything I share. I'll look at a piece of content and think, right, what's this saying about me? Is it honest? Is it accurate? I would say it's very rare that I would look at something and be like, that's a complete lie. But I think I'm always thinking like, how do I make this more me? And I've absolutely seen what's come from that. I'm really, really fortunate that from that personal brand, it's been where all of my press features have come from. Worked with Forbes on a full feature, and that was just purely from kind of showing up, the book deal, speaking gigs, working with brands. Like a personal brand, I think just gives you such an incredible platform, and it almost allows you to not have to go and pitch for the opportunities, but gives you a platform where the opportunities can see you and ask you, which is so my preference. I do not like hard selling myself. So personal branding is my dream. I just get to do it and then wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, having a personal brand, certainly, I wouldn't say get rid of, but certainly dilutes the need for sales. Is in from because someone has already bought into you, and we do, we like to think we're rational, but we're not. We buy emotionally, and when we feel we've got a connection with a brand, and when we're talking personal branding, it's the brand, the person, it's interlinked. We've already bought into that. Actually, the sit down meeting about the work is basically saying, I want to work with you. What do we need to do?
Yeah, exactly that. I think it just majorly like reduces that kind of sales journey, doesn't it? Or at least I'd almost see it as like the buyer's journey always exists, but your personal brand can lead people right up to the end of that buyer's journey. Sometimes, like you said, it then goes from, and it happens quite rarely for me, which I'm really grateful for. But when it does happen, I remember why I'm so grateful for my personal brand. Those sales calls where you just know that person is sat there wanting you to sell to them. They're like, so why should I work with you? Or like, tell me, and like, that's just like, I probably have 1 in 100 sales calls are like that, because the other 99 are just as you said, hey, I'm already bought in, not necessarily chatting to other people because I've already understood that we're the right fit. Let's just talk about details, how, when, what, how much,
Mm.
etc. And like, I just love that. Like, I don't want to be selling to someone. I don't want to convince someone that they should work with me. That's not my decision to make on their behalf. Don't get me wrong. There's moments where I have to go, okay, Alice, this is your moment. You need to slightly prove yourself here. Book deal was a good example of that. You know, they came to me, they were probably 90% sold on me writing the book. I had to close that final 10%, right? I had to
Yeah.
come back to them and go, okay, let me puff up my chest and prove to you why you should definitely pick me. So yeah, I think you still have to have that bit at the end, but isn't it so great just to not to have to sit and convince someone to pick you? That just makes me so uncomfortable. Not my way of doing things.
No, I mean the power of a personal brand is huge. What advice do you give to people who are starting off in that journey? Like how, because do people try and, I'm seeing it now with people almost trying to replicate someone else. And while it's great to take some influence from other people, I actually think one of the powers of the personal brand is to have your personality and your take on, like actually go back to your comment of, you know, you could find a multitude of experts in marketing, but they wanted your personality in the experts of marketing.
Yes, I think it's a hard one, isn't it? Starting anything, because the truth is that clarity comes best from action. So it
Mm.
can feel very chicken and egg of like, well, I need both. I need to be taking the action because we know that action is the only thing that really makes change, but I don't feel clear. And I think it, my opinion is always to err on the side of that action feeling quite messy. You know, I look back at my early days and I probably did replicate people to get started. And I think whatever you need to help yourself just take those first steps, whether it's like your content feeling absolutely rubbish, whether it's like slightly emulating things that you've seen elsewhere, however you get started, in my opinion, is fairly irrelevant. It's getting started so then you can learn. You know, the
Yeah.
best way to learn is to do. I've got a client who I wasn't working with them at this point, but they told me the way they figured out their kind of message and their reputation and their brand is for 30 days, they put out a different piece of content, i.e., they chose 30 topics that were within their kind of sphere of expertise. And they spoke about a different topic every day for 30 days. And then at the end of those 30 days, they looked at what performed best, what did they feel proudest of, which did they like creating, which did they feel excited by. And then they just kept going in that direction. And then they kept doing more tests and more experiments and were curious about what was coming from that. I think building a personal brand takes experimentation and curiosity. Go, right, I'm going to take a step. How does that step feel? You know, sometimes I've put content out and I've gone, oh, I don't think I want to be talking about that topic. I could, but there's something about that didn't feel good. Or I'll think, oh, everyone's going to love this. And then I talk about it and no one cares. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Sounds like we don't resonate with that thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just constant learning, isn't it? And not putting the pressure on yourself to come up with a brand. It's not making you up your personal brand. It's just labeling what's already true. You know, ask people around you, how
Mm.
would you describe me? What do you think I'm good at? You look at your testimonials, your feedback. If people, you know, people said to me, hey, you're really practical and actionable and simple in the way you share, that feedback then directly led to me putting that into my content, which then directly led to more people knowing me for that and all the things that have come from it. So I think it's, you know, a multitude of things, but really it's all about feedback, testing, learning, seeing how things feel, and knowing that if you don't feel excited to say it, it's probably not in your personal brand. There's a lot of topics I could talk about because I have expertise in that area, but I just can't be bothered to, which tells me it's not something I want to bring into that brand.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, being messy, testing, and trying to find your own voice actually is really important. Yeah, understanding what connects, because I mean you often see that, don't you? You spend ages over one bit of content and then it never actually goes anywhere. Yet that quick post that you put up, which was really your personality there and then, really connects with people, and you're like, oh, I literally just created that today and posted it. So sometimes that messy way of doing things is the way that you can learn what you enjoy doing, what you're good at doing, but equally what other people need, because that's the balance, isn't it? You need that the brand has to be something you're knowledgeable about, something you're an expert in, something you're excited about, but equally something that other people need. Um,
Yes.
Regardless of how big that audience is, it's fine to be really niche and talk about whatever it is, but yeah, you do need to try and connect those two.
I often think of it as kind of a three-pronged Venn diagram where you've got what are you good at, what do you enjoy, and what do people need?
Mm,
If you think of those three things, your business, what you do, what you sell, what you're known for should be at the center of those three. You don't just want to be led, like you said, from like, what am I good at and what do I enjoy? Because actually that doesn't make any commercial sense. But we also
no,
don't want to just be led by what do other people want? Because if it's not aligned to us, we're not going to be able to do it consistently. We're not going to want to bring any energy to it. So I think it is trying to find that midpoint of, yeah, how can I show up in a way with a message and a brand that's, yeah, in my expertise, exciting to me, but also what other people want. And I genuinely think it is a constant learning journey, finding that midpoint. There is no moment in my 8 years of business where I've felt like I've done it. I figured it out. I've got
no.
my brand, because my brand constantly evolves. For 4 years, I was known as a marketing strategist. And now I'm a business and marketing strategist. I've brought in arms to the business. Every time something changes for me, I have to reevaluate what's the reputation? What have I learned? The economy changing makes us need to reevaluate that. So I think, as well as accepting it's not a destination, you don't finish getting clarity. You just keep getting clearer. And then the next day you'll get clearer again. So I think there's some expectation setting as well. You're not going to listen to this podcast, do that exercise, and your problem is solved. You're going to begin the journey, and that journey will be a forever one until you stop showing up again.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to, build your brand over something actually you do enjoy. So not
Yeah.
just being an expert and not just people need, because certainly at the start, and I admit I'm fairly early on in my journey, but the reason I'm staying consistent with posting is because I enjoy it. If I'm not getting that, maybe, and you should never do it for validation from other people directly. But equally, if I was just posting for that validation, well, you don't get that at the start because you're a new account, you're a new brand. You're not going to go viral. Okay, occasionally people do, but on your first couple of posts, it's unlikely. You need to just keep that consistency going, which is where being comfortable and believing in it and enjoying it is so important.
Completely agree. Like, that consistency in the early days is so dull sometimes, isn't it? Like, no one's giving you validation. There doesn't feel like there's momentum. I think a lot about kind of the loop being closed between like action and result. When we take
Mm,
action and we don't get a result, it's really hard because we don't feel like there's been this dopamine, this feedback, this confirmation. And I think business is basically about how long are you willing to spend without that loop being closed? How
yeah.
long are you willing to take the action and show up before you see the results? And I do think the people that succeed are the ones that just keep going in those seasons. I think back to my podcast, which has been around for 5-6 years now. The first year or two, barely anyone listened. And I don't say that like that is not an exaggeration. I'm talking like we now get the same downloads in a day as we used to get in 6 months. And that's
Yeah.
not because it's really popular now. That's because it was nothing then.
Yeah.
And like there is no way I would have got through those first couple of years if I didn't love it. Like you said, you've got to love it, because if you love it, you don't really need any feedback from anyone else. You don't
No.
really need to be working because you're just having a good time. So I
Yeah.
think that is so key and often ignored. I think our enjoyment as a business owner often seems like a fluffy extra, but actually it's fundamental, because if you're loving it, you'll bring the consistency, and that consistency is going to be what leads to then other people engaging with it too. So I think, yeah, that's a great reminder. I love that you shared that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it needs consistency, and because growing on social media is very hard at the early stages, and it's just almost like a numbers game. Someone who's got 100,000 followers, for them to gain 200 followers or 300 followers in a day is easy. But actually, when you've only got 100 followers, you're not going to jump to 500 in a day. And occasionally, and I'm not completely dismissing people who do have that, viral video or viral reel or viral whatever, and gain that. But actually, understanding that's the exception, not the norm, I think is really important to actually just keep going, because it is a journey. And we talk about overnight success, and I spoke about this in the episode that's actually going out the week before this, or a couple of weeks before this, with Lottie White, you don't get overnight success, you get overnight recognition quite often.
That's
And it's true. You suddenly you blow up a bit and everyone's like, wow, look at everything you're doing. Yeah, you haven't seen the 8 years before that.
Yeah, completely that. I was at a conference yesterday and someone did a really similar talk where I think they'd been kind of hired to talk about like, here's how I made £1 million in my business this year. And they showed this kind of list of every year for the last 10 years, what their revenue had been. And, you know, the years where it was really low, the years where it went down, you know, we don't see that stuff a lot of the time. It's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about having more honest conversations. You know, a platform like this is brilliant for it, around like, what is business really like? Because I think when we acknowledge it can be great, but also there's some realities that come with that. Like it just becomes easier, doesn't it? When we have these unrealistic expectations of that kind of overnight success, we're only making things harder for ourselves. Almost expecting the slog. That's kind of my mindset. If anything, my expectations are low. So usually they're at least sometimes succeeded.
Alice, just to finish off today, you know, what advice would you give to someone starting out in business? So whether this is personal brand, whether it's their marketing, what advice would you give to someone?
Take consistent, curious, messy action. That is my personal commitment to myself. I've had that on various office walls that I've been in for the last kind of 6 years or so. I say it to almost every client or student that I work with. To me, that's the only secret to business success. You know, there's so many people out there telling you they have the secret, the blueprint, the one thing you need. Doesn't exist unless they're selling you a cookie cutter approach that's probably not going to work for anyone but them. They don't have a secret. The only secret is that kind of action. You know, I've had the privilege of working with some incredible businesses, and I'm always curious when I meet businesses in any context to kind of understand, like, okay, what's made you work? Why is this working? And genuinely, I can say hand on heart, the only thing I've seen is they take this action. So for me, it's consistent. You know, a lot of what we've talked about today, being consistent with it doesn't have to mean constant, doesn't have to mean you show up every day, but as consistent as you can be. Messy, embracing you're not going to feel ready. The people that I see succeed are the people that don't wait to feel ready. They just go for it. And then curious, you know, I think I mentioned it already, the idea of kind of looking for the lessons, looking for the learnings, seeing what you take from that action. Yeah, that's kind of my personal mantra, and something that I think if someone had said it to me in the early days, I might have rolled my eyes and been like, ugh, boring, give me a secret, give me something a bit sexier than that. But like, yeah, I think that is it. How consistent, messy and curious can your action be? That's always my goal.
Oh, that is brilliant. I mean, I'm just going to pick on that a little bit, actually, that the messy action. I think that's so true, because as someone who spent years searching for the perfect productivity hack, and I have tried every tool, every bit of software, every system there is
Right.
out there, I've actually realized I've just got to get started
Mm,
and get into that habit, and just taking that messy action, and understand that, you know, I almost I almost want to be embarrassed by the social media post I put out a year ago. You know, I want to
yeah.
cringe at those videos like, oh Matt, why are you standing like that? You know, like, because it shows growth. And I'm quite comfortable with that.
I love that. I think that is the best goal to have. Like, I cringe. Even at what I did like 2 months ago. I won't lie, Matt. I've impressed yours as a year. Mine's good like last week. And I'm like, God, that's embarrassing. But like the way I see it is like my goals are worth being embarrassed for. Like I'm all right to be embarrassed. Like what is being embarrassed? Being embarrassed doesn't not pay my bills. Being embarrassed doesn't not give me the life that I want. Like I'm all right to feel a bit embarrassed, but I'm so excited by the things that, you know, potential embarrassment might get me. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is that I think people hear me, I talk about messy action a lot. And I think people hear that and they feel quite scared by it because they think what I mean is like being messy, like, you know, what you're sharing is rubbish or you're being like, you know, careless. And like, I just think we all have such high standards. Even our idea of messy is probably still very close to perfect. But I don't mean that. When I say messy action, what I mean is how quickly can you switch from the internal prep to the external action? People spend so long doing the internal stuff, like you said, finding another tool, filling out another worksheet, doing their website again. I don't know if you see that. People are like, I just need to refine my website. And you're like, your website's fine. Like,
Yeah,
can we move on from the internal stuff? Because the internal stuff is needed, but it doesn't grow your business. That for me is why my whole thing is, how do I get people to take action? Because keeping people in the internal stuff, people buying another course, filling out another worksheet, doing another thing, thinking a bit more, doing some more research, there comes a point where we do that to stall the external action.
Yeah.
And we just think, if I just do another this, if I just do another, and it's like, if you just take some external action, you will learn and you will grow. And so for me, that's what Messy is about, is how quickly do you move from internal to external? And I'm always looking at, how do I speed that up?
Yeah.
How do I have an idea? Like yesterday, sorry, this is final thing I say, I realize I'm really, as you can tell, I love Messy action.
Yeah.
And also very timely, I'm probably not meant to say this, but this is like a private place to say it, in conversation about the next book being about Messy action. So watch this space.
Watch this space.
Many
I
opinions.
like that.
Yeah, it's like, how quickly can you take that external action? Like yesterday at this conference I was at, I had an idea for a new business project, and I just pinged an email off to someone that I knew would help me start the conversation about it. I don't know. The thing might not happen. That person might come back and say, but I was like, how do I just take a piece of external action here? And it felt messy, and I'm not ready, but I'm not going to be ready unless I start taking the action.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I guess you have to work out whether you actually need to watch that YouTube video on it, or if it's just an excuse to actually stop you getting on with it. Because it's very easy to find excuses. There's so much out there. And obviously I'm telling people now to go and read Alice's book before taking the action. But equally, the point still stands. At some point you need to take action. You need to have some knowledge, you need to know what you're doing, but you need to take action. That is the important thing.
Yeah, move between the two, right? Read a page of the book, go do something with it. Read another page, do something with it. I don't think it's about internal stuff is relevant, but it's almost like, stop thinking that's where you stay. Like It's like tiny bit of internal, jump to the external, and kind of flip flop from there. So yeah.
Alice,
so
thank you.
Not the point. So I think it underpins everything.
Alice, thank you so much for today. I've absolutely loved our conversation, and you've given me some really key insights into how you run your business. Certainly some stuff I'm going to put in place. And keep reminding myself to take that messy action. I wish you all the best with the book and book number 2. Once again, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Matt. I've genuinely loved this chat. It's so nice to have conversations like this. And there's a lot. I've scribbled some notes as we were talking as well. So thank you. And up for chatting to anyone who's listened that wants to ramble about these things more.
Excellent. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.